Raymond Vance built his life on control. Control over time, control over people, control over outcomes. Every morning began the same way, 6 a.m. sharp. Not 6:01, not 5:59. His blinds opened automatically, calibrated to let in precisely the amount of light his sleep consultant had recommended. His coffee machine started brewing 30 seconds later. Black, no sugar, no milk. Consistency mattered. Raymond didn't believe in luck. He believed in preparation. By 6:12 a.m., he was already reviewing overnight reports from Asia. By 6:30, he had completed his workout. Exactly 1,200 calories burned. No more, no less. His smartwatch vibrated every time his heart rate strayed outside the optimal range. It rarely did. At 7:05, his assistant Ruth sent the first reminder of the day. Board meeting at 9 a.m., investors confirmed, press standing by, or Raymond acknowledged the message without replying. Ruth knew better than to expect unnecessary communication. By 8:17 a.m., Raymond stepped into the lobby of the Vance Global Tower, phone in hand, mind already several floors ahead. Upstairs, his head of operations, Collins, was waiting. Bruno from legal had already flagged 3 agenda items for discussion. Michael from finance would challenge projections, as usual. Raymond welcomed the challenge. He entered the elevator without looking up. He was behind schedule by 43 seconds. That mattered. The elevator doors slid shut. The ascent began. Then, impact. The heat hit first. Liquid splashed across his chest, soaking into the fabric of his perfectly tailored navy suit. The smell of coffee filled the enclosed space. The elevator stopped. So did Raymond. For a brief, unfamiliar moment, his brain failed to calculate a response. Oh my God. Raymond looked up. The woman standing in front of him held an empty paper cup, frozen mid-movement. She wasn't frantic. She wasn't apologizing over herself. She wasn't even panicking. She was calm. Her eyes flicked from the stain on his jacket to his face. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "You look like someone who isn't used to surprises," she said. Raymond glanced down at the spreading stain, then back at her. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" She tilted her head, pretending to think. "Enough to survive one bad morning, I hope." His jaw tightened. "I have a board meeting in 8 minutes. A meeting that affects over 400 employees. And now you're wearing coffee," she said gently. "Life has a sense of humor." That response irritated him, and unsettled him. Raymond reached up, instinctively trying to brush the stain away, only making it worse. The coffee spread, darker and more obvious, like evidence of failure. "You're making it worse," she observed. "I know what I'm doing." "Are you sure?" Raymond stopped rubbing the fabric and stared at her. She didn't look intimidated. She didn't look impressed. She didn't look like anyone who cared who he was. "You're not going to apologize?" he asked. She considered the question carefully. "I already did." "That wasn't an apology." "It was," she said. "Just not the one you wanted." The elevator chimed softly as it reached the upper floors. The doors opened. She stepped out, then paused. "For what it's worth," she added over her shoulder, "you look more real this way." Then she walked away. The doors closed before Raymond could respond. He stood alone in the elevator, staring at his reflection in the mirrored wall. The stain was unmistakable. The suit, ruined. But that wasn't what unsettled him. It was the feeling in his chest. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something else entirely. Curiosity. Raymond Vance was 36 years old. He had founded Vance Global before his 30th birthday and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. The press called him the man who never missed. Investors trusted him. Executives feared him. Employees respected him, from a distance. Control was his reputation. But during that 2-minute elevator ride, a stranger with a cup of coffee had done something no one else ever managed to do. She had taken it from him. The board meeting lasted 2 hours. Raymond remembered none of it. His attention drifted back to the stain every few minutes, as if it were mocking him. Collins noticed. Bruno noticed. Michael noticed. No one said anything. When Raymond finally returned to his office, he removed his jacket and tossed it into the trash. Then he pulled it back out. Then he stared at it for a long moment before hanging it carefully over a chair. "Mr. Vance," Ruth's voice came through the intercom. "Are you all right?" The motion sensor flagged unusual movement. "I'm exercising," Raymond said flatly. "With your jacket?" Raymond looked at the jacket, then at the ceiling. "Ruth, disable the motion sensor in my office." "Sir, you installed that system yourself, and now it's reducing my productivity." A pause. "I'll turn it off." That night, the penthouse felt larger than usual, too quiet. Raymond poured himself a glass of water and stood by the window overlooking Manhattan. The city pulsed below him, alive, chaotic, unpredictable. He turned away and walked toward the bookshelf lining the far wall. Behind a row of business biographies and minimalist decor, he pressed a hidden panel. A drawer slid open silently. Inside was a book, worn, creased, clearly read more times than he would ever admit. His favorite. Raymond sat down, opened it, and felt his shoulders loosen for the first time all day. This was the one place control didn't matter. Then his phone buzzed. Publisher announcement. Final book will conclude the series with a tragic ending. Raymond's breath caught. "No," he whispered. "Not like that." He reread the message. Then again. The next morning, during a strategy meeting, Raymond interrupted Collins mid-sentence. "I want to discuss a new acquisition." Confused looks filled the room. Raymond projected the company's name onto the screen. A publishing house. Romance fiction. Bruno laughed. "Since when do we buy publishers?" "Since now," Raymond replied. Michael frowned. "You've said fiction is a waste of time." Raymond met his gaze without blinking. People change. 3 days later, Chloe Davis walked into the Vance Global boardroom, and Raymond's perfectly controlled world tilted on its axis. For a fraction of a second, the room stopped breathing. Raymond Vance sat at the head of the table, hands folded neatly in front of him, posture flawless. Across from him, his executives waited for his reaction, some curious, some confused, all alert. The glass walls of the boardroom reflected his image back at him, calm, controlled, unreadable, since standing just inside the doorway was the woman from the elevator. The same calm eyes, the same unhurried presence, the same quiet confidence that didn't ask permission. Raymond's pulse spiked. Only Ruth noticed. She had learned to read the smallest shifts, the tightening of his jaw, the fractional pause before he spoke. She leaned toward him and whispered, barely audible, "She's the author." The author. Raymond's gaze flicked back to Chloe Davis, now moving toward the table as if this were any other meeting, as if she hadn't spilled coffee on his suit 3 days earlier, as if she hadn't walked out of his life and taken something intangible with her. "Good afternoon," Chloe said, setting her bag down. Her voice was steady. "Thank you for seeing me." Raymond stood. He did it automatically, the motion ingrained by years of habit. "Ms. Davis, welcome." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, tension, a challenge neither of them named. But before anything else could be said, Collins cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should begin?" Raymond nodded once. "Of course." The meeting proceeded. Numbers, projections, polite exchanges. Chloe listened more than she spoke, occasionally jotting notes, occasionally glancing up at Raymond with an expression he couldn't quite read. When she did speak, it was with precision, measured, thoughtful, and unafraid. Raymond admired that. He hated that he admired it. When the meeting ended, Chloe gathered her things. She paused near the door, then turned back to him. "So," she said lightly, "you're the billionaire who bought my publisher." "This is business," Raymond replied, his voice steady. I want the ending changed." Chloe laughed, not loud, not mocking, but sharp enough to cut through the room. "You don't get to buy emotions, Mr. Vance. I get what I pay for." She stepped closer, just enough to lower her voice. "Then you don't understand stories at all." The room fell silent. Chloe didn't wait for a response. She simply smiled once, turned, and left. And just like that, she was gone again. That night, the penthouse felt like a museum after closing. Too pristine, too quiet, too empty. Raymond loosened his tie and set it aside with unnecessary care. The city glowed beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan stretched out in a constellation of lights, alive and restless. He watched it from a distance, glass between him and the noise. This was the part of the day he disliked most. There were no meetings to run, no problems to solve, no one to manage. Just silence. Raymond moved through the space with practiced ease, turning on a lamp here, straightening a book there. Everything had its place. Everything was exactly where it should be. And yet, he stopped in front of the bookshelf. For a long moment he didn't move. Then, as if checking to make sure no one was watching, even though he was alone, he pressed his fingers against the hidden panel behind a row of glossy hardcovers. The drawer slid open with a soft click. Inside lay the one thing that did not fit his life: a paperback novel. The cover was worn, the edges soft from use. The spine creased and recreased, pages marked with slips of paper and faint pencil lines. It looked nothing like the polished volumes that filled the rest of the shelf. Raymond picked it up carefully, as if it might break. This was his secret. He sank onto the couch and opened the book, the familiar weight settling into his hands. The room seemed to exhale with him. His shoulders loosened, his breathing slowed. Here, he didn't have to be Raymond Vance. Here, he could just be a reader. The story unfolded the way it always did, characters flawed and stubborn, moments tender and painful. He knew the passages by heart, but he read them anyway, especially the ones that made his chest ache in a way he never allowed himself to feel anywhere else. This book gave him something no deal, no victory, no perfectly executed plan ever had. It made him feel. His phone buzzed. Raymond frowned, irritation flaring. He considered ignoring it. He rarely did that. But tonight, he glanced at the screen. Sub-publisher announcement. Final book will conclude the series with a tragic ending. The words blurred. Raymond read them again. Then again. "No," he whispered. His chest tightened, breath catching as if he'd run too fast up too many stairs. He stood abruptly and began pacing the room, the book still clutched in his hand. This wasn't acceptable. He scrolled, searching for more information. Interviews, articles, confirmation. Every source said the same thing. Tragic ending. No exceptions. No revisions. Raymond stopped pacing. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "It can't end like that." The rational part of his mind tried to intervene. "It's fiction," it said. "Characters. Words on a page." But the rest of him, older, quieter, more honest, rebelled. These characters had been with him through nights when the penthouse felt too large, through holidays he'd worked instead of attending, through moments when the weight of expectation pressed too hard against his chest. They mattered. And now someone intended to take them away. Raymond sat down heavily, running a hand through his hair. Panic. Real, unfiltered panic spread through him. He didn't remember the last time he'd felt it. Not during market crashes, not during hostile takeovers. This was different. His phone buzzed again, a reminder from his productivity app. Sleep window begins in 42 minutes. Raymond stared at the notification. Then he threw the phone onto the couch. He stood and walked back to the bookshelf, sliding the novel into the drawer and closing it with more force than necessary. The click echoed in the quiet room. "No," he said again, louder now. "I won't allow it." The words hung in the air, absurd and revealing all at once. Allow it. As if stories obeyed him, as if endings could be negotiated. The next morning, Raymond arrived at the office early. Too early. During the strategy meeting, while his executives debated expansion plans and quarterly forecasts, Raymond barely listened. His mind was elsewhere, circling the same thought again and again. It doesn't have to end this way. Halfway through Collins's presentation, Raymond spoke. "I want to discuss a new acquisition." Heads turned. Collins blinked. "Sir?" Raymond tapped his tablet. The screen shifted, displaying the name of a publishing company. A pause followed. Bruno frowned. "That's not on the agenda." "It is now." Michael leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "We don't invest in publishing." "Portfolio diversification," Raymond replied smoothly. "But it's fiction," Michael pressed. "Romance fiction." Raymond's gaze didn't waver. "Markets evolve." There were looks exchanged around the table, skeptical, confused, concerned. "You've said fiction is a distraction," Bruno said carefully. "Entertainment for people without direction." Raymond remembered saying that. He'd believed it too, or at least he'd wanted to. "People change," he said again. No one argued after that. The decision was made before anyone fully understood it. That night, alone once more in his penthouse, Raymond stood by the window and watched the city pulse below him. The glass reflected his image back. Sharp lines, tailored suit, a man entirely in control. But beneath that image, something else stirred. Obsession. Not with Chloe Davis. Not yet. With the story. With the ending he refused to accept. Raymond turned away from the window and walked back to the bookshelf. He opened the hidden drawer, retrieved the novel, and held it close. He wasn't just afraid of losing a character. He was afraid of losing what the story gave him. And for the first time in his life, Raymond Vance was willing to break his own rules to keep it. The boardroom on the 42nd floor had been designed to intimidate. Glass walls, a table carved from a single slab of stone, chairs engineered for posture and power. From here, Manhattan looked small, manageable. Raymond Vance had approved every detail personally. This was where decisions were made. And this morning, every eye was on him. Collins stood at the far end of the table, tablet in hand, mid-presentation. "Which brings us to Q3 projections," he said, glancing toward Raymond for approval. "If we maintain current momentum—" "Pause," Raymond said. The word cut cleanly through the room. Collins stopped. Bruno, seated to Raymond's left, straightened slightly. Michael frowned, already anticipating a deviation. Peter, the newest member of the executive team, leaned back with guarded interest. Raymond folded his hands. He looked calm. He felt anything but. "I want to discuss a new acquisition," he said. Silence followed. Bruno broke it first. "A new acquisition?" His tone was neutral, but his eyebrows rose. "We just closed 2 last quarter." "This one is different," Raymond replied. Collins hesitated. "Sir, it's not on today's agenda." Raymond didn't look at him. "It is now." He tapped his tablet, and the screen at the head of the table lit up. Lighthouse Publishing Group. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Michael let out a short, super incredulous laugh. "Is this a joke?" Raymond turned his gaze toward him. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Michael cleared his throat. "Publishing? As in books?" "Yes." Bruno leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "We're a technology firm, Raymond. Software, data infrastructure, AI logistics. What strategic value does a mid-tier publishing house offer us?" "Diversification," Raymond said smoothly. "Content ownership. IP expansion. Peter shifted in his seat. Most of their catalog is fiction, he added, scanning the data. Romance, primarily. The word hung in the air. Romance. Michael shook his head. With all due respect, this makes no sense. You've been publicly critical of fiction for years. Raymond felt the faintest tightening in his chest. I've been critical of inefficiency, he corrected. The publishing industry is inefficient. Ace, that doesn't mean it lacks potential. Bruno exchanged a glance with Collins. The financials don't look promising, Bruno said carefully. Debt is rising, sales are inconsistent. There's risk. Every opportunity carries risk, Raymond replied. That's why we mitigate it. And the timing? Michael pressed. Why now? Raymond had prepared for this question. He'd prepared for all of them. Because endings matter, a voice inside him said. Because I can't let it end that way. Instead, he said, because undervalued assets don't stay undervalued forever. It was a good answer. Logical. Convincing. A lie. Peter glanced up from his tablet. You're proposing a full acquisition? Yes. Bruno exhaled slowly. Raymond, this is impulsive. The word landed harder than Bruno intended. Raymond's gaze sharpened. I don't make impulsive decisions. There it was, the unspoken rule of the room. Raymond Vance did not act on impulse. He calculated, he optimized, he executed. This decision threatened that identity. Michael hesitated, then spoke again. There's also reputational risk. If the press finds out, they won't, Raymond said. And if they do, we'll frame it as a strategic expansion into content ecosystems. Collins shifted his weight. Sir, he said gently, may I suggest we table this for further analysis? Raymond looked around the table. 4 men who trusted him. 4 men waiting for certainty. He gave it to them. Proceed, he said. I want the acquisition completed by the end of the week. The silence that followed was heavy. Bruno nodded slowly. Understood. Michael looked unconvinced but said nothing. Peter tapped his screen, us already adjusting projections. Collins swallowed and resumed the meeting. From the outside, it looked like any other decisive moment in Raymond Vance's career. From the inside, something had shifted. Ruth noticed it immediately. She noticed everything. Raymond's assistant had worked with him for 7 years. She knew his habits, his tells, the rhythm of his days. She knew when he was angry, when he was bored, when he was quietly pleased. And today, something was wrong. He skipped his mid-morning coffee. He reread emails he would normally approve without pause. He stood at the window longer than usual. Sir, Ruth said through the intercom, the legal team needs clarification on the lighthouse acquisition. Raymond didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was even. Authorize full due diligence. No delays. Yes, sir. She hesitated. May I ask something? Raymond closed his eyes briefly. Go ahead. Why this publisher? The question was careful, respectful. Ruth had earned that much. Raymond opened his eyes and stared at the city beyond the glass. Because it aligns with our long-term vision. It was another lie. Ruth accepted it, but she didn't believe it. After the line went dead, she made a note to herself. Watch this. That night, Raymond returned to the penthouse later than usual. The lights turned on automatically. The temperature adjusted to his preferred setting. Everything worked exactly as it should. And yet, he didn't go to the window this time. He went straight to the bookshelf. The drawer slid open. The novel waited. He picked it up, thumb resting on the edge of a page he knew by heart. This time, he didn't read. He just held it. And I'm doing the right thing, he told himself. This wasn't about control. It was about preservation. About protecting something meaningful from a careless ending. He'd built his empire by identifying flaws in systems and fixing them. This was no different. Raymond sat down and opened his laptop. He pulled up interviews with the author, Chloe Davis. Sparse, guarded, no personal details, no videos, just words. One quote caught his attention. "I write the endings that feel honest, not the ones people ask for." Raymond frowned. Honest? What was honest about loss? About stripping meaning from a journey by denying its reward? He closed the article and leaned back, fingers pressed together. She doesn't understand what this story means, he thought. And just like that, the decision solidified. He would meet her. Not as a fan, not as a reader, yeah, as the man who now owned the company publishing her work. The next morning, Raymond arrived early again. Ruth was already at her desk. She looked up as he entered his office. "I want a meeting with Chloe Davis," he said without preamble. Ruth blinked. "The author?" "Yes." "May I ask the purpose?" "Editorial strategy." It was the same phrase he'd used yesterday. It sounded official. "Safe." Ruth nodded. "I'll reach out to her agent." "No," Raymond said. "Directly." Ruth studied him for a moment. "Very well." As she turned to leave, Raymond added, "Schedule it as soon as possible." "Sir," she said quietly, pausing at the door. "Are you all right?" Raymond met her gaze. "I'm fine." It was the most convincing lie he'd told all day. 3 hours later, the acquisition papers were signed. The numbers were staggering. The speed unprecedented. Smeichel protested once more. Bruno advised caution. Peter suggested a phased approach. Raymond overruled them all. When the final confirmation came through, he felt a surge of satisfaction. Sharp, immediate, and unsettling. Power. He stood alone in his office, holding the tablet that confirmed the deal. $1 billion, redirected on impulse, or so it would look to anyone else. Raymond placed the tablet on his desk and looked around the room. The awards, the framed magazine covers, the evidence of a life built on control. He told himself he was fixing a problem. He told himself he was being rational. He told himself this had nothing to do with the woman in the elevator, or the book in the drawer, or the feeling he couldn't name. That night, as the city darkened beyond the glass, Raymond allowed himself a small, private smile. And money could fix this. He was certain of it. He believed money could fix endings. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The boardroom was quiet in the way only expensive rooms ever were. Glass walls rose from floor to ceiling, sealing the space off from the rest of the world. The city beyond them shimmered, distant, contained. The table stretched long and polished, each chair precisely aligned. Raymond Vance sat at the head, jacket buttoned, posture immaculate, fingers laced together. He was in control again. Or at least that's what the room suggested. Ruth stood near the door, tablet tucked against her side. Collins, Bruno, Michael, and Peter occupied their usual seats. The meeting was scheduled to begin in 60 seconds. Raymond checked the time, on schedule. "Ms. Davis has arrived," Ruth said, as Raymond nodded without looking up. "Send her in." The door opened. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then she stepped inside. Chloe Davis didn't rush. She didn't hesitate either. She crossed the threshold as if she belonged there, not as a guest, not as someone impressed by glass and height and money, but as someone entering a familiar space. Raymond's chest tightened. It was her, the woman from the elevator. Same calm stride, same unhurried confidence. She wore a tailored blazer over a simple blouse, hair pulled back loosely, eyes alert and curious. Not intimidated, not deferential. Recognition hit him like a delayed impact. The room faded slightly at the edges. Chloe's gaze met his, and for a fraction of a second something flickered there. Recognition, too. But if she felt anything, she didn't show it. She simply smiled, polite and measured. "Good afternoon," she said. "I'm Chloe Davis." Raymond stood automatically. "Ms. Davis, welcome." His voice sounded steady. He was relieved for that. Chloe glanced around the room, then took the seat Ruth indicated. She set her bag down and folded her hands on the table, waiting. Ruth cleared her throat. "For the record," she said, glancing at Raymond. "Ms. Davis is the lead author under contract with Lighthouse Publishing." The author. The words landed fully this time. Raymond felt the world tilt, just slightly, enough to throw off balance without anyone else noticing. He looked at Chloe again, really looked. The pieces slid together with unnerving clarity. The coffee, the smile, the refusal to apologize. Of course it was her. Chloe met his stare evenly. If she recognized him too, so she gave no sign beyond the faintest lift of an eyebrow. "So," she said lightly, breaking the silence, "you're the billionaire who bought my publisher." A few of the executives shifted in their seats. Raymond sat down slowly. "This is a business meeting." "Of course," Chloe replied. "Those are usually the interesting ones." Bruno cleared his throat. "Ms. Davis, thank you for coming on such short notice. Mr. Vance wanted to discuss the ending," Chloe said, turning back to Raymond. "You want it changed." The directness caught the room off guard. Raymond didn't deny it. "Yes," Chloe smiled. Not warmly, but not unkindly either. "I assumed." Michael frowned. "Perhaps we should frame this as an editorial discussion." "No need," Chloe said. "Let's be honest." She leaned back slightly, studying Raymond as if he were the one under review. "You didn't buy Lighthouse for diversification. You bought it because you don't like how my story ends." The silence deepened. Raymond felt heat rise under his collar. "You're making assumptions." "I'm making observations," she corrected, "and I'm very good at that." Raymond folded his hands again, the familiar gesture grounding him. "This is business," he repeated. "As the owner of the publishing house, I have a vested interest in its outcomes." "Outcomes," Chloe echoed. "That's an interesting word for a story." She turned to the others briefly. "Do you mind if I speak freely?" No one answered. Raymond didn't stop her. Chloe looked back at him. "You believe control equals value. That if you can shape the result, you can guarantee satisfaction. That's not. And you believe money gives you the right to intervene," she continued calmly. "Because money has always solved problems for you." Raymond's jaw tightened. "I get what I pay for." The words sounded harsher out loud than they had in his head. Chloe didn't flinch. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "Then you don't understand stories at all." Bruno inhaled sharply. Peter looked down at his tablet. Michael stared straight ahead. Raymond felt something unfamiliar creep up his spine. Not anger. Exposure. "You're confusing art with emotion," Raymond said. "Emotion is subjective. Markets aren't." "Stories aren't markets," Chloe replied. "They're mirrors." She held his gaze steadily. "And sometimes people don't like what they see in them." Raymond opened a folder in front of him and slid a document across the table. "The contract gives me final approval on significant editorial decisions, as the ending qualifies." Chloe didn't even glance at the paper. "You can own the building," she said, tapping the table lightly. "But you don't own the truth of the story." "Truth is negotiable," Raymond said. Chloe smiled then, soft, almost sad. "That explains a lot." The room felt smaller. Raymond leaned back. "I'm offering resources, global marketing, adaptation opportunities, in exchange for a revised ending." "Revised how?" Chloe asked. Raymond hesitated. "Just a beat. I want it to be hopeful." "Hopeful," she repeated. "Or comfortable." The words struck deeper than he expected. Raymond straightened. "Happy endings sell. Sometimes," Chloe said. "And sometimes they lie." She stood and walked toward the glass wall, hands clasped behind her back. The city stretched out before her, endless and alive. Do you know why I wrote it the way I did?" she asked without turning. Raymond didn't answer. "Because some losses matter," she continued, because pretending they don't cheapens everything that came before. She turned back to face him. You want to change the ending because it makes you uncomfortable, not because it's wrong? Raymond felt the words land with surgical precision. My discomfort is irrelevant, he said tightly. Is it? Chloe asked. Then why are you here? The question hung between them. Raymond searched for a response that didn't reveal too much. Because I believe the story can do better. Better for whom? For the readers. Chloe shook her head slowly. You don't get to decide what readers need. Raymond felt irritation finally break through. Everything has a price. That sentence, Chloe said quietly, is the difference between us. She returned to her seat and picked up her bag. The answer is no. Bruno spoke up. Ms. Davis, perhaps there's room for compromise. There isn't, Chloe said gently. And before you threaten me with contracts or public pressure, let me be clear. She looked directly at Raymond. I will walk away from this book before I let someone else rewrite it for their comfort. Raymond imagined the headlines, the fallout, the loss. You'd risk everything? He asked. Yes, she said without hesitation. Because this story isn't a product to me. It's a promise. The room was silent again. Chloe stepped toward the door, then paused. She glanced back at Raymond, her expression unreadable. You know what's funny, she said. What? Raymond asked. You bought an entire publishing house because of a book you clearly care about, she said. But you can't admit that. Not to me, not to them, not even to yourself. Raymond didn't respond. Chloe opened the door, then stopped one last time. When you figure out why you care so much, she said softly, come find me. Then she was gone. The door closed with a quiet finality. Raymond remained seated, staring at the empty chair she'd left behind. He had never lost a negotiation. And yet, for the first time, power had failed him, and the worst part wasn't the refusal. It was the feeling she'd left behind, one he couldn't control, couldn't silence, and couldn't buy away. Raymond Vance did not chase people. People came to him. They requested meetings weeks in advance, rehearsed their words, adjusted their posture when they entered his office. They waited. They negotiated on his terms or not at all. So the fact that he spent the entire night replaying Chloe Davis's voice in his head irritated him more than he cared to admit. When you figure out why you care so much, come find me. He barely slept. The city outside his penthouse window pulsed with its usual nocturnal rhythm. Sirens, distant laughter, the low hum of traffic. But inside, everything felt hollow. The space was immaculate, too clean, too quiet. Control without comfort. By morning, Raymond had convinced himself this was strategic, not personal. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, tie already knotted, coffee untouched on the counter. The reflection staring back at him looked composed, precise. Unbothered, he turned away from it. Ruth, he said into the intercom, I need Chloe Davis's schedule. A pause. Her personal schedule, sir? Yes. Another pause, longer this time. She doesn't keep one, Ruth replied carefully. At least, not one we can access. Raymond closed his eyes for half a second. Then find where she is. Silence. I'll do my best, Ruth said finally. 2 hours later, Raymond sat in the back of his car as it crawled through Brooklyn traffic, an area he rarely visited unless absolutely necessary. Glass towers gave way to brick buildings, then to narrower streets lined with cafes and bookstores. Ruth's voice came through his earpiece. She frequents a coffee shop on Bedford Avenue, small place, independent. Of course it was. Send the address, Raymond said. The car pulled over 15 minutes later. Raymond stepped out and immediately felt out of place. The coffee shop was nothing like the sterile, minimalist spaces he preferred. Warm light spilled through the windows. A chalkboard sign out front read, "Coffee first. Everything else later." He frowned at it. Inside, the air smelled like roasted beans and something sweet. Cinnamon, maybe. The place buzzed softly with conversation, laughter, the clink of ceramic cups. No one looked up when he entered. No recognition. No fear. Raymond scanned the room. He spotted her in the corner. Chloe sat at a small round table, jacket draped over the back of her chair, notebook open in front of her. A half-finished cappuccino rested beside it. She was writing, pen moving steadily, expression focused, but relaxed. She looked at ease. Raymond approached, each step deliberate. "You weren't kidding," she said without looking up. "You really do walk like you own the floor." He stopped. "You knew I was here." "I heard the silence shift," she replied, finally meeting his eyes. "Sit down." Raymond hesitated, then took the seat across from her. The table was slightly uneven. He noticed immediately. "I assume you're here to continue yesterday's conversation," Chloe said. "Yes." "Good," she replied, "because I don't like unfinished thoughts." Raymond leaned back. "You refused my offer." "I did. I'm prepared to revise it." Chloe tilted her head. "Money? Resources? Influence? Protection?" She smiled faintly. "You really don't know how to talk to writers." Raymond ignored that. "What do you want?" Chloe closed her notebook and folded her hands on top of it. "I want you to understand what you're asking for." "I understand perfectly," she shook her head. "You understand contracts, not consequences." Raymond felt impatience stir. "Then explain it to me." Chloe studied him for a long moment as if weighing something invisible. 1 week, she said. 1 week of what? Of not being you. The words landed softly and hit hard. Raymond straightened. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you'll get." She leaned forward slightly. 1 week without control. He almost laughed. "That's impossible." "Exactly." Raymond's eyes narrowed. "Define control." "No phone," Chloe said. "No smartwatch. No tablet. No productivity apps. No tracking your sleep or steps or minutes." His chest tightened. "No fixed schedule," she continued. "You wake up when you wake up. You eat when you're hungry. You sleep when you're tired." "This is absurd," Raymond said flatly. 1 activity per day, Chloe added calmly. Chosen by me." He stared at her. "Absolutely not." "And at the end of the week," she finished, "we talk, honestly, about why the ending matters so much to you." Raymond let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You're asking me to sabotage my own life. I'm asking you to live it." Silence stretched between them. A barista called out an order. Someone laughed nearby. The world continued, unconcerned. "I have a company to run," Raymond said. "You have people who can run it," Chloe replied. "Delegate." "That's not how this works." "It's exactly how it works," she said. "You just don't trust anyone else to do it." Raymond felt irritation flare. "This isn't about trust. It's about responsibility. For you, those are the same thing." He leaned forward. "And if I refuse?" Chloe shrugged. "Then nothing changes. The ending stays as it is. You keep your control. Everyone's satisfied. You don't sound convinced." "I'm not," she said softly. "But it's your choice." Raymond looked around the cafe again. The mismatched chairs, the worn wooden floor, the people who seemed unbothered by time. This place terrified him. "You're confident I'll agree," he said. "I'm hopeful," Chloe corrected. "There's a difference." Raymond exhaled slowly, logic racing ahead of him. This was irrational, unmeasurable, risky. And yet, "What are the rules?" he asked. Chloe's eyes lit with a spark of surprise she quickly masked. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I had a feeling you'd ask," she said, sliding it across the table. Raymond unfolded it. Rules. No electronic devices for 7 days. None. No fixed schedule. 1 activity per day chosen by Chloe. No advance notice, no negotiations during the week. One honest conversation at the end. "This is extortion," Raymond said. Chloe smiled. "No, it's an invitation." "And if I do this," he said slowly, "you change the ending." "I'll consider it," she replied. He looked up sharply. "That's not a guarantee." "Neither is life," Chloe said. "You of all people should know that." Raymond leaned back, folding the paper carefully. Every instinct screamed no. This would disrupt his systems, his routines, his identity. He imagined Ruth's reaction, Collins's confusion, the board's concern. He imagined the silence without his phone. The thought made his pulse spike. "If I do this," he said, "and you don't change the ending, you'll survive," Chloe said gently. Raymond stared at her. "You're enjoying this," he accused. "A little," she admitted. "But mostly I'm curious." "About what?" "About who you are when no one's watching." The words unsettled him more than any threat could have. Raymond glanced down at the folded rules again. 1 week, 7 days. He had controlled entire markets in less time. "Fine," he said suddenly. Chloe blinked. "Really?" "Yes." Her smile widened, genuine this time. "Tomorrow." Raymond frowned. "Tomorrow?" 8 a.m., she said. "At my apartment." He stiffened. "Absolutely not." "You don't have to come inside," she said. "You just have to show up." "And then?" "And then," Chloe said, standing and slinging her bag over her shoulder, "you hand over your phone." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "At 8 a.m. tomorrow," she said. "You give me the one thing you can't live without." She smiled and turned toward the door. Raymond watched her leave, heart pounding in a way no negotiation ever had. He sat there long after she was gone, the folded paper still in his hand. 1 week, no control, no guarantees. For the first time in years, Raymond Vance had agreed to something without knowing the outcome, and that scared him more than losing any deal ever had. "At 8 a.m. tomorrow, you hand over your phone." Raymond Vance arrived at exactly 7:58 a.m. Not 7:57, not 8:01, exactly 7:58. He stood on the sidewalk outside a narrow brick building in Brooklyn, phone in hand, coat perfectly pressed, eyes already scanning the street for inefficiencies, double-parked cars, a cyclist weaving through traffic, a man walking too slowly while staring at his screen. The building looked ordinary. Too ordinary. No doorman, no marble lobby, no glass facade, just a buzzer with faded names taped beside it. He checked the time again, 7:58. At 7:59, the door opened. Chloe Davis stepped out, holding a small cardboard box. "Good morning," she said cheerfully, as if this were a completely normal thing to do. Meet a billionaire at dawn to dismantle his life. Raymond straightened. "You're early." "I live here," she replied. "That gives me an advantage." She looked at his hand. "You brought it." Raymond followed her gaze to his phone. Of course he had. His lifeline, his compass, his anchor. "I haven't agreed to—" Chloe held up the box. "Shoebox," she said. "Very secure. Extremely intimidating." Raymond frowned. "You're joking." "Only a little." He hesitated. This was ridiculous. He could still walk away. Well, get back in the car. Call Ruth. Cancel everything. Resume control. Instead, he placed the phone in the box. Chloe closed the lid immediately. "Wait," Raymond said, a sudden spike of panic cutting through his chest. "I didn't—" She tucked the box under her arm. "Welcome to day 1. Something cold settled in his stomach. Chloe led him inside. The apartment was the opposite of his penthouse in every possible way. It was small, for one thing. Cozy. The walls were painted a warm, imperfect white, decorated with framed photos, sketches, and book covers. Plants crowded the windowsills. Books were everywhere, stacked on tables, lining shelves, even piled on the floor in neat, intentional chaos. Raymond stood just inside the door, frozen. "This is efficient," he said carefully. Chloe snorted. "That's one word for it." She hung her coat on a hook and kicked off her shoes. "You can leave yours there." Raymond stared at his shoes, Italian leather, hand-polished. "I don't remove my shoes indoors," he said. "Why?" "They're clean." "That's not an answer." He hesitated, then reluctantly removed them, lining them up precisely by the door. Chloe watched with amusement. "You're adorable when you're stressed." "I'm not stressed. You've blinked 17 times in the last 10 seconds. Raymond opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. He didn't know how many times he'd blinked. "How do you know that?" he demanded. "I don't," Chloe said. "But you believed me." She gestured toward the living room. "Come on," he followed. A dog lifted its head from a rug in the center of the room. Long ears, sad eyes, a face that looked permanently disappointed in humanity. "This," Chloe said, "is Mr. Darcy." The dog stared at Raymond. Raymond stared back. "Why is it looking at me like that?" Raymond asked. "That's just his face." Mr. Darcy sniffed the air, then stood, waddling over to Raymond with surprising determination. He sniffed Raymond's leg, circled him once, then sat down abruptly and sighed. "He disapproves," Raymond said. "He does that to everyone," Chloe replied. "You're special." Raymond exhaled slowly. "I don't like dogs." Mr. Darcy's ears drooped further, if that was even possible. "He heard that," Chloe said. "He's a dog." "And you're a control freak," she replied lightly. "Yet here we are." She pointed to the couch. "Sit." Raymond sat. "Now what?" he asked immediately. Chloe smiled. "Now we do nothing." Raymond blinked. "Excuse me? Nothing," she repeated. "No agenda, no goal, no output. That's not an activity. It's the hardest one." Raymond shifted on the couch. "For how long?" Chloe shrugged. "Until it's uncomfortable." "That's not a metric." "Exactly." Silence descended. Raymond's leg began to bounce almost immediately. He clasped his hands together, unclasped them, looked around the room, counted the books, estimated square footage, noted the unevenness of the coffee table. "This is inefficient," he said. Chloe said nothing. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Raymond cleared his throat. "Has it been 5 minutes?" Chloe glanced at the wall clock. "About 45 seconds. He groaned. His fingers twitched. His mind raced. Emails were piling up. Meetings were happening without him. Decisions were being made in his absence. The thought made his chest tighten. "I need to check something," he said, half rising from the couch. Chloe didn't look at him. "Sit down." "I just need to make sure." "No," she said calmly. "You don't." He sat back down, jaw clenched. Mr. Darcy hopped onto the couch beside him, leaning his full weight against Raymond's thigh. Raymond stiffened. "Get off!" The dog didn't move. "Get off," Raymond repeated. Mr. Darcy closed his eyes. Raymond looked at Chloe. "He's touching me. He's bonding. This is not bonding. This is an invasion." Chloe smiled. "You'll live." Minutes dragged by. Raymond felt exposed, untethered. Without his phone, time felt strange, elastic, unpredictable. Each second stretched longer than it should. His thoughts, usually organized into neat columns and priorities, spilled into one another. "What do I do with my hands?" he asked suddenly. Chloe looked up from her book. "Use them." "For what?" She shrugged. "Exist." Raymond stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. This was unbearable. Eventually, Chloe stood. "Lunch. Finally," Raymond said. "What's the plan?" "There is no plan," she replied, grabbing her coat. "We'll walk." "Walk where?" "Somewhere." He followed her out, unease buzzing under his skin. They walked aimlessly through the neighborhood. Chloe pointed out a mural, a bakery, a tiny bookstore wedged between two buildings. Raymond noticed everything and nothing at the same time. At a corner, Chloe stopped. Pizza? It's 11:30. And? And it's unhealthy? So what? So what? He echoed. It's food, she finished. That tastes good. They sat on the curb, pizza box between them. Chloe ate happily. Raymond stared at his slice. Mr. Darcy sat expectantly at his feet. No, Raymond said firmly. The dog tilted his head. No, Raymond repeated. The dog stared harder. Chloe laughed. He'll win. I won't allow it. Mr. Darcy lunged suddenly, snatching the slice from Raymond's hand and retreating triumphantly. Raymond stared in disbelief. He stole my pizza. Chloe wiped her mouth. He does that. You didn't train him? I tried. He negotiated. Raymond shook his head. This is chaos. Yes, Chloe said. Isn't it wonderful? That night, Raymond lay awake on Chloe's couch, staring at the ceiling. No alerts, no reminders, no glowing screen. Just silence. Mr. Darcy jumped up and curled at his feet. Raymond didn't protest. For the first time in his adult life, nothing was demanding his attention. And that terrified him. Or because without the noise, without the schedules and the control, his thoughts grew louder. Regret. Fear. Longing. He closed his eyes, heart racing. For the first time, silence scared him. Raymond woke up disoriented. That was the first problem. There was no alarm. No vibration on his wrist. No calm, synthetic voice telling him exactly how many hours he'd slept and whether they had been optimal. He opened his eyes to unfamiliar light slanting through thin curtains. The sound of distant traffic muffled by brick walls instead of reinforced glass. For a moment, panic flared. He sat up abruptly, heart racing, already reaching for a phone that wasn't there. Right. Day 2. Mr. Darcy lifted his head from the rug and regarded him with sleepy judgment. Good morning, Raymond muttered. The dog yawned. As Raymond swung his legs off the couch and stood, suddenly unsure what to do next. His brain searched for instructions, for a schedule to follow, for something measurable. There was nothing. The absence felt like standing without armor. Chloe appeared from the kitchen wearing an oversized sweater, hair pulled into a loose knot, coffee mug in hand. She looked rested. You survived, she said. Barely, Raymond replied. She smiled. Progress. What's today's activity? He asked immediately. She sipped her coffee. You'll find out. That's unacceptable. Get used to it. He followed her into the kitchen. The space was small but warm, cluttered with magnets, handwritten notes, and photographs taped to the fridge. People smiling. Arms around each other. Moments frozen without polish. Sit, Chloe said, gesturing to a chair. Raymond sat. Suddenly she placed a plate in front of him. Toast? He asked skeptically. Avocado toast, she corrected. With lemon. It's very trendy. I don't follow trends. You're eating one. He took a cautious bite. It was good. He didn't comment. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Not the tense silence from the day before, but something softer, less demanding. Chloe watched him over the rim of her mug. You slept. I didn't have a choice. Did you dream? Raymond paused. Yes. She raised an eyebrow. About work? No. That surprised him more than it surprised her. About what then? She asked. He shook his head. I don't remember. Chloe didn't push. Get dressed, she said instead. We're going out. Where? To meet people. Raymond stiffened. People? My friends. I wasn't informed. You don't get informed, she reminded him. Sus, you show up. An hour later, Raymond stood in a small, sunlit apartment crowded with noise. Laughter spilled from every corner. Music played softly in the background. Someone was arguing passionately about a movie ending. "This is Joan," Chloe said, gesturing to a woman with short curls and a loud laugh. "She tells the truth even when it's uncomfortable." "I'm allergic to bullshit," Joan said cheerfully, shaking Raymond's hand with surprising force. "This is Laura," Chloe continued. "She paints. Abstract stuff. Lots of feelings." Laura waved, paint smudged on her jeans. "I like your shoes." "They're Italian," Raymond said automatically. Laura blinked. "Cool." "And this is Clara," Chloe added. "She works in publishing." Clara smiled knowingly. "So you're him." Raymond froze. "I'm sorry?" "The billionaire," Clara said lightly. "Ooh, don't worry. I won't ask for money." Mitchell appeared beside them holding a beer. "And I'm Mitchell. I do a little of everything and none of it well." Raymond nodded. "Raymond." "I know," Mitchell said. "Chloe talks about you." Chloe shot him a look. "I do not." "You do," Mitchell grinned. "A lot." Raymond felt heat creep up his neck. They gathered around a low table littered with pizza boxes. Again. "You people eat this constantly," Raymond said. "Yes," Joan replied. "It's called joy." They talked. They laughed. They teased each other mercilessly. Raymond tried to follow along, but the rhythm was wrong. Conversations overlapped. No one waited their turn. No one summarized conclusions. It was chaos. And slowly, uncomfortably, he realized he wasn't needed to control it. At one point, Joan turned to him. "So, Raymond, what do you do for fun?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. "Fun. He hesitated. "I work." Laura tilted her head. "That's not fun. That's survival." "I enjoy being productive," Raymond said defensively. "What do you enjoy besides that?" Clara asked gently. Raymond searched his mind. There were books. One book. He didn't say it. "I enjoy efficiency," he finished. The group exchanged glances. Joan grinned. "We're going to fix you." Raymond's pulse spiked. "That won't be necessary." Chloe watched the exchange with quiet interest. Later, Mitchell dragged out a board game. "No," Raymond said immediately. "It's easy," Mitchell said. "You roll dice." "I don't gamble." "It's not gambling. There are dice." Joan pushed the box toward him. "Relax, CEO." Raymond sighed and sat. The rules were explained quickly and poorly. Raymond asked questions. Too many questions. "What's the objective?" he asked. "To have fun," Mitchell said. "That's vague." They started anyway. Raymond lost almost immediately. He stared at the board in disbelief. "That doesn't make sense." "You can't win everything," Laura said kindly. "I usually do." They laughed, and then, unexpectedly, Raymond laughed too. It slipped out before he could stop it. A short sound, unpolished, real. He froze. The room went quiet for a fraction of a second. Chloe's eyes met his. Something shifted. Later, as the others drifted into smaller conversations, Chloe and Raymond ended up on the balcony. The city hummed below them. "You did okay," she said. "I failed at everything," he replied. "And yet you're still standing." He leaned against the railing, exhaling. "They don't measure success." "No," Chloe said. "They experience it." Raymond was quiet for a moment. "Why do you write?" he asked suddenly. Chloe considered the question. "Because it's the only place I don't have to pretend." Raymond nodded slowly. "I pretend constantly." She looked at him. "I know." The honesty in her tone disarmed him. "I don't know who I am without control," he admitted. "That's what this week is for," she said softly. Raymond glanced back inside at the group, still laughing, arguing. Alive. Something warm stirred in his chest. Unfamiliar. Welcome. As they headed back to Chloe's apartment later that night, Raymond caught himself smiling at nothing in particular. And for the first time, he didn't immediately try to stop it. He smiled, without realizing it. Raymond found the tablet on the 4th day. It wasn't hidden well, just tucked beneath a leaning stack of hardcovers in Chloe's office, half forgotten like an artifact from another life. He noticed it the moment he stepped into the room, though he tried to pretend he hadn't. He told himself he was only curious. He told himself he wouldn't turn it on. He told himself a lot of things. Chloe had stepped out to run an errand, Mr. Darcy asleep in a sunlit patch on the floor. The apartment was quiet in that deep, late afternoon way. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against the ears. Raymond stared at the tablet. His chest tightened. Just to check, he thought. 5 minutes. Make sure everything's fine. He slid the device free and held it like contraband. The screen was dark, smudged with fingerprints that weren't his, and he hesitated, longer than he expected, then pressed the power button. It took forever to boot. Raymond's knee bounced as the loading circle spun, his breath shallow. When the home screen finally appeared, relief washed over him so intensely it startled him. There it was. Order. Folders aligned. Icons neat. Familiar. He exhaled. No internet, he muttered, half disappointed, half grateful. But he didn't need it. Months ago, for emergencies, he'd downloaded an offline version of his productivity app. The irony didn't register at first. He tapped the icon. Charts bloomed across the screen. Tasks, schedules, metrics, everything where it belonged. Raymond's shoulders loosened. Yes, he whispered. That's better. He scrolled. Missed meetings, delegated decisions. Notes from Ruth and Collins queued for review. The world had continued without him. Imperfectly, but intact. He nodded as if approving a report. Then the app refreshed. A single notification slid into view. Reminder, call Dad, anniversary. Raymond froze. The date beside it was 3 years old. His throat closed. He stared at the reminder, unblinking, as if it might vanish if he waited long enough. It didn't. The text sat there, small and merciless. Call Dad, anniversary. He remembered setting it. He remembered the logic behind it, efficiency. He'd been traveling that week, a merger in Chicago, back-to-back meetings. The reminder was insurance. He never made the call. He swallowed. 3 years ago, his parents had been married for 32 years. He'd grown up watching them share quiet jokes over coffee, argue about trivial things, fall asleep on the couch during movies. And they weren't perfect, but they were solid. 6 months after that reminder, they divorced. Raymond found out through an email, a formal email. He'd been in a boardroom reviewing projections when the notification popped up. He'd read it once, then again, then archived it. There had been no call, no conversation, no chance to ask what had gone wrong. He stared at the reminder now, his fingers numb. A sound behind him made him flinch. What are you doing? Chloe stood in the doorway, grocery bag slipping from her hand as oranges rolled onto the floor. Raymond turned too fast. Nothing. She looked past him, at the tablet, at the screen. Her expression changed. That's a lie? She said quietly. Raymond shut the tablet off, the click too loud in the silence. I just needed to check. Check what? Chloe asked, stepping inside and setting the bag down carefully. That the world still spins without you? That's not fair. It's exactly fair. She crossed her arms. 4 days, Raymond. You made it 4 days. I didn't break, he said sharply. I slipped. The word is cheated, she replied. He bristled. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Chloe interrupted. You turn everything into data. Feelings, people, time. Everything gets quantified so you don't have to feel it. That's not... You think organization is safety, she continued. But for you, it's control. And control is fear in a nice suit. The words hit harder than he expected. Mr. Darcy padded into the room, sensed the tension, and retreated to the corner with a sigh. Chloe glanced at the tablet. What was the reminder? Raymond's jaw tightened. It's none of your business. You're in my apartment, she said evenly. Living by my rules, trying to change my story. It's my business. Silence stretched. Raymond looked down at the dark screen in his hands. It was a reminder, he said finally. To call my father. Chloe waited. On my parents' anniversary, he added. She didn't interrupt. They divorced 6 months later, Raymond said. His voice was steady, which almost annoyed him. I didn't call that day. I was busy. Chloe's gaze softened. You blame yourself. I don't, he snapped. Marriages end all the time. And yet, she said gently, you kept the reminder. Raymond didn't answer. She stepped closer. You check that app every day. He looked away. My father once told me I was too efficient to be human, Raymond said suddenly, and the words spilling out before he could stop them. He turned toward the window, the city blurring beyond the glass. He said I treated everything like a transaction, even people. And what did you say? That efficiency was a strength, Raymond replied, that emotions complicate things. Chloe was quiet for a moment. And now? She asked. Raymond closed his eyes. I don't know, he said. I don't know who I am if I let things matter, because everything I've ever lost. He stopped, breath catching. I lost when I wasn't in control. Chloe stood beside him shoulder to shoulder. Loss isn't a failure, she said softly. It's proof you cared. He laughed once bitterly. That's easy to say when you write the endings. I don't control them, Chloe replied. I listen to them. Raymond turned to face her. That's why the ending scares me, he admitted. Because it feels like proof that no matter what I do, I lose. Chloe held his gaze. Or proof that you lived. They stood there in silence, the city humming below. Chloe reached out and took the tablet from his hands, setting it gently on the desk. I'm not angry, she said. I'm just concerned. About what? About what comes next. Raymond frowned. What do you mean? She met his eyes. Tomorrow, she said softly, you face the real test. A chill ran through him. What test? Chloe smiled sadly. No preparation, no plan, no control. Raymond's pulse quickened. What happens tomorrow? He asked. Chloe shook her head. You'll find out. She turned off the light and led Mr. Darcy out of the room. Raymond remained by the window, the ghost of the reminder lingering in his mind. And for the first time he understood the truth he'd been running from. He wasn't afraid of losing control. He was afraid of losing people, and discovering it was his fault. And tomorrow, whatever Chloe had planned, would strip away the last of his armor. He wasn't sure he was ready, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. The email hit at 6:42 a.m. Raymond didn't see it arrive. He was standing in Chloe's kitchen, staring at a mug that had gone cold in his hands, replaying yesterday's conversation like a bruise he couldn't stop pressing. Mr. Darcy snored softly at his feet. Chloe was still asleep. The world didn't wait. By the time Raymond stepped back into signal range and his phone, returned for the day under strict rules, buzzed itself awake, it was already too late. Urgent from Vance Global Internal Subject. Confidential. For immediate review. He opened it. The screen filled with forwarded messages, screenshots, a private memo pulled from deep within the company's servers, a thread that was never meant to leave the building. And there it was, naked and undeniable. A purchase order for a struggling romance publisher. A calendar invite labeled Meeting with Author. A flagged note from legal, unusual executive interest. And beneath it, the line that split his chest open. Personal attachment suspected. Raymond's breath hitched. Another notification slid in before he could process the first, then another, then 10 more. He looked up just as Chloe walked into the kitchen, hair tousled, eyes sleepy. "What's wrong?" she asked. He didn't answer. His phone rang. Ruth. He declined it. The phone rang again. Collins. Then Bruno. Then Michael. A news alert flashed across the screen, bold and merciless. Billionaire CEO, secretly obsessed with romance novels. Inside Vance Global's most unexpected acquisition. Chloe read the headline over his shoulder. "Oh," she said softly. Raymond closed his eyes. By 8:15 a.m., the story was everywhere. By 8:20, hashtags had formed. By 8:30, investors were calling. And by 9 o'clock, the boardroom was full. Raymond sat at the head of the table, spine straight, face carefully blank. The glass walls of Vance Global's top floor reflected a version of him he barely recognized. Sharp suit, steady hands, eyes that gave nothing away. Around him, panic hummed. Bruno paced. "This is a disaster. A PR nightmare. We look impulsive, emotional, weak." Michael tapped his tablet. "The stock dipped 3% pre-market. Analysts are circling." Peter leaned forward, voice tight. "We need to shut this down. Distance yourself, immediately." Ruth stood near the door, arms folded, watching Raymond with concern she didn't bother hiding. "This is a leak," Collins said. "We find who did it. We make an example." "No," Bruno snapped. "We contain, damage control. We release a statement, strategic acquisition, diversified portfolio, no personal involvement." Michael nodded. "Deny everything. People forget quickly." Raymond listened. He always listened. His phone buzzed again. A message from Chloe, sent an hour ago. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer. "What do you want to do?" Ruth asked quietly. Every eye turned to him. This was the moment they trusted him with. The moment they expected. The moment he'd mastered his entire life. Control. Raymond folded his hands on the table. "We issue a statement," he said evenly. "Clarify the acquisition. Emphasize strategy." Bruno exhaled. "Good. Good. That's what I was saying." Michael added, "We suspend the book release until this settles. Remove the emotional angle." Peter nodded. "Yes. Kill the distraction." Raymond felt something inside him recoil. Chloe's voice echoed in his head. "You don't get to buy emotions." He looked down at the polished table, at his reflection fractured by light. "Proceed," he said. The word tasted like ash. Ruth stiffened. "Raymond, this meeting is over," he said, standing. "I'll handle the author." He didn't wait for approval. The hallway outside felt longer than usual, quieter, as if the building itself was holding its breath, and he stepped into his office and closed the door. For a moment he just stood there. Then he pressed the intercom. "Ruth," he said, "draft the suspension notice." There was a pause. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll send it," she said softly. Raymond sank into his chair. His phone vibrated. Chloe again. "They're saying things online. About you. About the book." He stared at the message. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. "It's temporary," he wrote. "I just need to stabilize things." The reply came fast. "You're choosing control." He didn't respond. Instead, he opened a new email. To Chloe Davis. Subject, publication schedule. The words blurred as he read them back. Due to unforeseen circumstances and reputational concerns, the release of the final manuscript is suspended until further notice. He hovered over send. This was safety, he told himself. This was protection. This was necessary. He clicked send. The silence that followed was immediate and brutal. Minutes passed. No reply. His phone rang. "Chloe," he answered. "Did you really do it?" she asked. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I had to," Raymond said. "This isn't about you. it's about the company." "You promised," she said. "I promised to consider," he replied. "And I am. This complicates things." A breath on the other end. Controlled. Hurt. "You're afraid," Chloe said. "I'm responsible," he snapped. "There's a difference." "No," she said gently. "There isn't." He stood, pacing. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "I understand exactly," she replied. "You're choosing the version of yourself that doesn't feel." "That version built everything," he said. "And it just destroyed something," she said quietly. He stopped. "Chloe." "Don't," she said. "Don't justify it. Just own it." Silence stretched between them. "I won't fight you," she continued. "But I won't wait either." "What does that mean?" Raymond asked. "It means I'm done," she said. "With this. With you." The line went dead. Raymond stood there, phone pressed to his ear, heart pounding too hard, too fast. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, something collapsed. Hours later, the press conference aired. Raymond watched it alone from his office, volume low. His own face filled the screen, composed, confident, untouchable. He spoke of strategy, of growth, of vision. He denied nothing outright, admitted nothing personal. The anchors nodded. The analysts debated. The stock stabilized. The world exhaled. Raymond turned the screen off. The office felt enormous, empty. He walked to the window, staring down at the streets far below, people crossing intersections without thinking about him at all. Control had worked. Everything was contained. And for the first time in his life, it felt like a loss. His phone buzzed once more. Not Chloe. A calendar reminder popped up. Auto-generated, emotionless. Task completed. Raymond laughed, a short, hollow sound. He had chosen control, and in doing so, he had lost everything else. The suspension notice went live at 7:03 p.m. Raymond watched the timestamp like it might change if he stared long enough. It didn't. The words stayed where they were, crisp and official, wrapped in corporate language designed to sound reasonable and bloodless, temporarily suspended, pending review, reputational alignment. He closed the laptop. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, Manhattan glowed, white headlights threading through streets, buildings lit like constellations. The city looked exactly the way it always had when he stood here after a long day, powerful, orderly, obedient to rhythm. Normally, that steadied him. Tonight, it felt like mockery. His phone buzzed on the marble counter. "Chloe, I'm downstairs." His chest tightened. He hadn't expected her to come. Some cowardly part of him had hoped she wouldn't. "Come up," he typed. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. "No," she replied. "I don't want to see your view. I want to see you." Raymond grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. The ride down felt longer than the one where she'd spilled coffee on his suit weeks ago. He remembered that moment with cruel clarity, the calm in her eyes, of the way she'd looked at him like he was human, not a title. The lobby was quiet when he stepped out. Chloe stood near the entrance, hands in her coat pockets, hair pulled back like she hadn't bothered to fix it. She looked tired. Not the dramatic kind of tired. Just worn, like someone who had finally reached the end of something they'd been holding together with hope. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she replied. They stood there a few feet apart, the hum of the building filling the silence. "Did you really think an email was enough?" she asked. "It was the cleanest way," Raymond said automatically. "No misunderstandings." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "You suspended my book." "I paused it," he corrected. "Temporarily." "You took my ending hostage," she said. "Call it whatever helps you sleep." He swallowed. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," Chloe said, finally meeting his eyes. "You're trying to protect yourself." They walked out into the night, the cold air snapping between them. The city smelled like rain and exhaust and impatience. "Everything exploded today," Raymond said. "You saw the headlines. The board." "I don't care about your board," Chloe interrupted. "I care about what you did after." He stopped walking. "What was I supposed to do?" "Nothing," she said. "You were supposed to do nothing." "That would have destroyed everything I built." She turned to him fully now. "And suspending my work didn't?" "It's temporary. You keep saying that like it's a spell." Her voice shook, just slightly. "Do you know how long it took me to write that book? Do you know what it cost me to choose that ending?" Raymond hesitated. "You told me it had to exist." "Yes," she said. "Because it was true. And you—" She exhaled sharply. "You decided truth was inconvenient. That's not fair." "It's exact." They reached the corner. The traffic light glowed red. Raymond rubbed his temple. "I was cornered, Chloe. Investors were panicking. If I didn't act—" "So you acted like the man I warned you about," she said softly. "The one who controls first and feels later." He looked away. "Say it," she said. "Say you were afraid." "I was responsible," he insisted. Chloe stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Those aren't opposites, Raymond." The light changed. Cars surged forward. "I thought I could balance it," he said. "Both worlds. Keep control and still—" "And still have me?" she finished. He didn't answer. She nodded slowly, like she'd just received confirmation of something she already knew. "There it is." "Chloe." "I told you from the beginning," she said. "I won't rewrite the truth to make someone else comfortable. Not even you." "I never asked you to rewrite the truth," he said, the lie coming too easily. She smiled sadly. "You just tried to silence it." They stood there, city noise rushing past, strangers brushing shoulders, living their lives. "This is where we stop," Chloe said. Raymond's breath caught. "Because of a delay?" "Because of a choice," she replied. "You showed me who you are when it matters." "I can fix this," he said quickly. "I can reinstate the release. I can make a statement." "That wouldn't fix anything," she said. "It would just be damage control." "What do you want from me?" he asked, frustration bleeding through. "I gave up a week of my life. I opened things I didn't even know were there." "And then you slammed them shut," she said gently. "The moment it scared you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The rules. The ones he'd agreed to. "I wanted to believe you could change," Chloe said. "But change isn't a performance. It's a pattern." She pressed the paper into his hand. "I'm done being your lesson," she said. "Don't do this," Raymond said, panic flaring. "We're not finished." She looked at him one last time. "We are." Then she turned and walked away. Raymond stood frozen as she disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by the city like she'd never been his to lose. Because she hadn't been. He didn't follow. By the time he returned to his penthouse, the silence was unbearable. The lights came on automatically. The system adjusted the temperature. Soft music began to play, pre-selected weeks ago. He turned it off. The apartment felt cavernous. Every clean line, every expensive surface suddenly obscene in its emptiness. Raymond loosened his tie, then pulled it off entirely, tossing it onto the counter. It landed beside his phone, which lay face down, stubbornly quiet. No messages. No Chloe. He walked to the bookshelf and stared at the hidden panel behind it. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, the novels waited. 27 worn spines. Dog-eared pages. Margins marked with notes he'd never let himself admit were emotions. He picked up the last book, the unfinished story, sat on the couch, opened it. The words blurred. Daniel stood on the brink of loss, love slipping through his fingers, consequences catching up. As Raymond closed the book with a sharp snap and pressed it to his chest, breathing hard. "This isn't how it ends," he whispered, but the apartment didn't argue. He rose and walked to the window again, looking out at the city that had always obeyed him. The stock would recover. The board would calm down. The narrative would shift. Control had worked. Everything was intact. Except him. Raymond rested his forehead against the glass, the cool surface grounding him in a way spreadsheets never had. For the first time, there was no next move, no plan, no app to tell him what came after. Just the echo of Chloe's words. Change isn't a performance. It's a pattern. Control had won, and it felt like failure. The invitation had arrived 3 days earlier. Raymond hadn't opened it right away. It sat on the counter of his penthouse, stark white against black marble, embossed lettering catching the light like an accusation. Lighthouse Literary Evening. A conversation on endings, featuring Chloe Davis. He read the title again. Endings. The irony was almost cruel. The city buzzed beneath his windows as usual, uncaring, efficient. The markets had stabilized. The board had quieted. The suspension remained in place, officially under review, its language as neutral as a locked door. Raymond had gone back to work. That was the problem. He moved through meetings like a machine that had been reset to factory settings. He answered questions, approved budgets, signed documents. Ruth watched him closely, her concern growing. With each day he didn't mention Chloe, or the book, or anything that wasn't measurable. "You don't have to stay late tonight," she said on Thursday evening. "I know," Raymond replied, not looking up. "You've been staying late every night." "I'm fine," she hesitated. "You haven't opened the invitation." Raymond's pen paused mid-signature. "I know." "You're expected," Ruth said carefully. "Not officially, but people will notice if you're not there." "I'm not part of the literary world," he said. She didn't argue. She never did when he used that tone. But as she left, Raymond stared at the closed folder in front of him and wondered when not being part of something had started to feel like loss. The night of the event arrived quietly. Raymond dressed with the same precision he always did, choosing a dark suit, crisp shirt, no tie. He told himself it was coincidence that he skipped the tie, told himself it meant nothing. The venue was already full when he arrived. Warm light spilled out onto the sidewalk, laughter drifting through open doors. Inside, rows of chairs faced a small stage framed by bookshelves and hanging lights. The atmosphere was intimate, human, everything he usually avoided. Raymond stayed near the back, half hidden by a column. And then he saw her. Chloe stood near the stage, speaking with the moderator, her posture composed, her hands folded loosely in front of her. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, no armor. Just herself. She looked alone. Not lost. Not fragile. Just solitary in a way that felt intentional. Raymond's chest tightened. This was her world. One he'd tried to control. One he'd nearly crushed. He stayed where he was as the crowd settled. Applause rippled through the room as Chloe stepped onto the stage and took her seat. The moderator smiled. "Tonight, we're here to talk about endings. The ones we want, the ones we fear, and the ones we don't see coming." Chloe nodded, listening. Raymond folded his arms, heart beating louder with every word. They talked about writing, about choice, about loss. "People assume writers choose endings lightly," Chloe said at one point, "like we sit down and decide who lives and who doesn't, based on what will please the most people." A few murmurs of agreement from the audience. "But endings," she continued, "are about honesty. Sometimes love survives, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the point isn't happiness, it's truth." Raymond flinched. "Do you ever worry about disappointing readers?" the moderator asked. Chloe smiled faintly. "Of course. But disappointing someone is different from lying to them." Raymond felt exposed, and like she was speaking directly to him across the room. He shifted his weight, considering the exits. He could leave now. slip out quietly. No one would stop him. Control would remain intact. Then Chloe said, "There's been some discussion about my latest book." A ripple of tension moved through the crowd. "I won't address corporate decisions," she added calmly, "but I will say this. No one owes the world a comfortable ending. We owe it truth." Raymond's breath caught. This was it. The moment he'd been avoiding. The moment where silence became complicity. He remembered Chloe standing on the sidewalk, pressing the folded rules into his hand. "I'm done being your lesson." He remembered the emptiness of his penthouse, the novels in the safe, the way control had tasted like ash. Raymond looked at the stage, at Chloe, at the space beside her. The internal battle rose fast and violent. If he stood up, the room would turn. Cameras would lift. Questions would come. The board would react. The narrative would explode again. He could lose everything. Or he could finally tell the truth. Raymond's hands trembled. He forced them still. "You're afraid," Chloe had said. He was. Afraid of being seen. Afraid of being small. Afraid of admitting that the thing he loved most wasn't power or precision or control, but stories that made him feel. The moderator glanced at the audience. "We'll take a few questions." A hand went up. "Do you think the ending will ever be released?" Chloe inhaled slowly. "I believe stories find their way into the world when they're ready." Raymond closed his eyes. "When they're ready." He opened them again and took a step forward. Then another. The murmur of the crowd shifted as people noticed movement at the back. Raymond walked down the aisle, heart pounding so hard he was sure it could be heard. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to sit down, to retreat. He didn't. When he reached the front, the moderator looked startled. Chloe turned. Their eyes met. Surprise flickered across her face. Then something else. Caution, maybe. Or hope she refused to name. Raymond stopped at the edge of the stage. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, into the microphone the moderator held out without thinking. "May I say something?" The room went silent. Chloe stared at him. This was the point of no return. Raymond took a breath and stepped onto the stage. The room held its breath. Raymond stood on the stage, lights warm against his face, the low murmur of the crowd fading into a distant hush. He could feel every eye on him, curious, confused, expectant. Somewhere near the front, Chloe sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. For the first time in his life, Raymond had no prepared remarks. No deck, no script, no strategy. Just truth, raw and unprotected. "I didn't come here as a CEO," he began, his voice steady, only because he forced it to be. "And I didn't come here to explain a corporate decision." A ripple of unease moved through the audience. "I came here because I've spent my entire life hiding," he continued, "hiding behind numbers, behind titles, behind the idea that control is the same thing as strength." He glanced at Chloe, then looked away, swallowing hard. "It isn't." The word landed heavily. Raymond exhaled, and letting his shoulders drop, just a little, enough to feel the difference. "I built a reputation on precision, on never missing, on never needing anyone." A faint, humorless smile crossed his face. "But there's something no one ever knew about me." A few phones lifted in the crowd. He didn't stop. "I love stories," Raymond said. "I always have." A quiet gasp rippled through the room. "I love the way they slow time, the way they let you feel things you don't know how to say out loud. I love endings that hurt, because they mean something mattered." He paused, breath catching. "And I've been ashamed of that." The words hurt more than he expected. "I told myself it was weakness, that caring too much was dangerous, that feelings were liabilities to be managed. Chloe's eyes softened, but she didn't move. Raymond took a step closer to her side of the stage. When I discovered who Chloe was, what she wrote, it felt like someone had reached into a locked room inside me and turned on the light. His voice wavered, just slightly, and instead of respecting that, I tried to own it. He shook his head. I tried to control it. Silence pressed in from all sides. I suspended her work not because it was wrong, he said, but because I was afraid. He turned fully toward Chloe now, afraid of losing control, afraid of being seen, afraid that if I let the truth exist, I wouldn't recognize myself anymore. His hands trembled. He didn't hide it. I'm sorry, Raymond said. Not the corporate kind. Not the version that comes with conditions or explanations. He met her eyes. I'm sorry without control. The room felt impossibly quiet. Raymond reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. The motion drew a murmur from the audience. I wrote something, he said. Not to change your ending, not to fix anything. He looked at Chloe again. Just to be honest. He unfolded the paper carefully, like it might tear if he rushed. This is for the man I pretended not to be, he said softly, and for the woman who reminded me I was human. He began to read. There was a man who believed order could save him. He built walls out of minutes and meetings, convinced that if everything stayed in place, nothing could be taken away. But love doesn't live inside walls. It lives in the moments we don't schedule, the ones that spill, that interrupt, that ask us to feel before we're ready. He learned too late that control doesn't prevent loss. It only prevents living. And when he finally let go, he didn't fall apart. He became real. Raymond lowered the paper. His chest rose and fell, breath uneven. I don't want to control your story, he said to Chloe. I don't want to rewrite it, delay it, soften it. He shook his head. I just want to stand beside you while you tell the truth. The pause that followed felt endless. Then Chloe stood. The sound of her chair scraping gently against the floor echoed through the room. She walked toward him slowly, every step deliberate. You're terrible at timing, she said quietly. A soft laugh rippled through the audience, easing the tension just a fraction. I know, Raymond replied. She stopped in front of him. You took something from me, Chloe said. You hurt me. I know. You chose control over trust. Yes. She studied his face. He's searching for something. Certainty, maybe. Or courage. And you didn't ask me to forgive you, she said. Raymond shook his head. No, I don't think forgiveness works like that. A long silence stretched between them. Then Chloe reached out and took the paper from his hand. She folded it once, carefully, and held it against her chest. This, she said softly, is why I write. Raymond's throat tightened. You don't get to decide my ending, she continued, but you do get to decide who you are in it. She looked up at him, and for the first time, you didn't hide. The audience waited, suspended in the space between them. Chloe stepped closer. This doesn't fix everything, she said. We'll still argue. You'll still struggle with control. I know, Raymond said. I probably always will. But you showed up, she said, and that matters. She rose onto her toes and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't polished. It was real. The room erupted, applause, cheers, a rush of sound that felt like release. Raymond barely registered it. All he knew was the warmth of her hand at the back of his neck, the way the world seemed to steady instead of tighten. When they pulled apart, Chloe smiled, really smiled. Come on, she said. Let's finish the evening. Raymond laughed, breathless. You're still in charge up here. Of course I am, she replied. They returned to their seats on the stage, side by side this time. The moderator cleared her throat, eyes shining. Well, she said, I don't think we planned for that." The audience laughed again. As the evening continued, questions came about writing, about truth, about endings. Raymond answered a few, honestly and briefly. He didn't dominate. He didn't manage the room. He simply existed in it. Later, when the lights dimmed and the crowd began to disperse, Raymond and Chloe stood near the edge of the stage. "I meant what I said," Raymond told her quietly. "I won't interfere. Not ever." Chloe nodded. "I know." "And the book?" he asked. "It'll be released," she said. "Exactly the way it's meant to be." Relief flooded him, not because he'd gotten his way, but because he hadn't tried to. They walked out together into the night. The city was still loud, still chaotic, still impossible to control. Raymond slipped his hand into Chloe's, and for the first time he didn't try to measure the moment. He just lived it, because sometimes the man who controls everything has to lose control, to finally live.